Well, good morning and welcome to Coffee with the Pastor. This week we've been talking about Moses and all the things about his life. Yesterday we talked about him going through the Yam Suf, or the Sea of Reeds, the Red Sea, wherever you believe that he went through. They were rescued. The Egyptian army was drowned. And then he takes them to Mount Sinai. Again, we're not sure where Mount Sinai is. I've looked, and there's at least 9 different beliefs about where it could be. And so we're not sure where it is, but he takes them to the mount where he had seen the burning bush. And when Moses had been given the call to go free the Israelites from Egyptian slavery, he was given a sign. He said, this will be a sign. You'll bring the people back here, where the burning bush was, Mount Sinai, and I'll speak to all the people. It was a sign. So Moses has brought them back to the mount, to the place where it started. But on the way, if you read the passages, you know that the Israelites get they get gripey. They start complaining about there's not enough water. Well, God miraculously gets some water. Complain about food. Manna falls from heaven. They complain about there not being meat. He gives them quail. He's providing for all their needs, but still they're complaining about saying, we want to go back to Egypt. They want to go back. So you know that there's a problem happening within the folks. Truthfully, when people start grumbling and griping and doing that kind of thing, you know there's a problem, and there was a problem there. But they get there, God gets them prepared to listen to God. And Moses, they prepare themselves with purity things and things that they do, and they get there, and they're ready to listen to God. God speaks, and God answers. Thundering, his voice was thunderous and all. And the people of Israel got scared, and they backed off. And they kind of looked, and if you read the scripture, they kind of said, Moses, why don't you just go talk to God and tell us what he said? And so Moses does that. That wasn't the intent of God. God wanted to talk to all of his people. He wanted to talk to all of them. And what his word to them through Moses was that they were to be a royal priesthood, a holy nation. Now, what was God's purpose for calling the Israelites as his chosen people? Well, he had chosen them to be priests. And what did priests do? Well, they intercede between God and another person. And God wanted the nation of Israel to show the one true God to all the other nations. You see, all the other nations had gods, they had idols, they had things that were not true, but he wanted them to show them and tell them about who the one true God is. And but Israel had a hard time with that. Now there's 2 things that happens. Because of their reluctance to listen to God, Moses has to go up and get all of these priestly codes, the priestly code, which is a good part of the rest of Exodus, a good part of Leviticus, and he has to say, okay, well, we got to call some priests out who go talk to God, who talk to the people, who will do sacrifices, do things for the people. I don't think that was God's original intent. I think his original intent was just to speak to his people. And so while he's up there getting those codes, and he's up there for a while, the people grow restless down underneath. And what do? Well, they have Aaron make them a golden calf so that they can start worshiping an idol. So, you know the story. Moses comes down, sees what's going on, breaks the tablets God had given him, probably the 10 Commandments on them, and then so he goes back up, and he gets another code. He gets the holiness code as long as the priestly code. Now, a couple things I want to mention about this today. First of all, God has a desire to speak to his people directly. And as Christians, we are his people. When you read Peter in 1 Peter, he uses the same language about the church that God used to Moses about his people. He said, I've called you the royal priesthood and the holy nation. And that's what the church has been called to do. We're to be priests. We're to be a holy people, a chosen people, one who shows God in our lives. And so I think it's significant that we do that. We also need to realize that as God wanted to speak to them directly, he wants to speak to us. That's why Jesus came, to be able to take the barriers down. That's why it talked about in the Holy of Holies, the curtain that separated that was rent from top to bottom, that God wanted to come and be among his people. That's why he wants you to have a prayer time today, to talk to him and listen to him. Listen to his voice. He wants to talk directly to you. You don't need a priest to do that. In fact, he wants you to be a priest to help those who don't know God, both by speaking to them like a priest would, and then also in your life by how you live, and that would be the holiness code. Now, it's interesting to me, and I've kind of speculated, that had of the people of Israel listened to God like he wanted, I don't think that the priestly code or the holiness code would have been necessary. Now, there's some scholars that agree with me, some who disagree with me on that. But God really wanted to deal with his people directly, not indirectly. And of course, most people, when they start reading the Bible, when they get to that, they read Genesis and it's good, start off the year, read the first part of Exodus and it's good, and then you hit into the last part of Exodus and then Leviticus and Numbers, you hit into the priestly codes and the holiness code, and it gets pretty bogged down. In fact, there's like 613 commands, give or take a few, in there. And so people get bogged down with those. And I don't think it was ever God's intent to bog us down. I think he wanted us just to live a life where we would tell other people about God, and where we would show his life with our lives. And just like he called his people to Mount Sinai to speak to him, he calls you to speak to him every day. I pray that you will. I pray that you'll be a priest of God, and you've been called to that, to tell other people about God. Don't be ashamed of God. And the other part is to live for God, to live a holy life, to live a life that is pleasing to him. And that's still our calling. And I know that you'll be doing that. I'll be praying for you. I hope you'll be praying for me. And I'll talk to you next week. Have a good day.